enough, Michael, does it? We'll do that later this afternoon. Yeah. There's always a lot to talk about with Ukraine, but certainly so much in the last couple of days, particularly with so many world leaders turning up in Davos for the World Economic Forum, not least Volodymyr Zelensky. We'll get onto that in a second. Before we do, let's just talk about today's trilateral talks in Abu Dhabi. We've had talks before. We've had the US talking to Russia, the US talking to Ukraine, Ukraine and Russia talking, but all together in one place. Is that, in your opinion, going to move things forward towards some sort of ceasefire, some sort of end to the war?
I doubt it, because the Ukrainians need to show that they're keen to talk. And so they're sending quite a high-powered delegation. I mean, Umarov is leading it, who's their main negotiator now and is close to Zelensky. And they've got a good delegation. The Russians look as if they're just sending a military delegation. And that actually is going to be a problem. It looks as if the Russians have got nothing to offer other than more of the same. You've got to give in or the war will continue. And so although, I mean, Witkoff is speaking very optimistically about this, saying we're close to peace, we're very close. Well, they're closer than they've ever been before, which is to say not close enough. Because the issues that, unless the Russians are going to give, and I'm sure they won't because of the delegation they're sending, there's no political authority in that delegation. And unless they're going to give something specifically on territory issues, they drop this demand that they have to be given the bit of the Donbass they haven't yet conquered, the fortress cities, which are really important to the Ukrainians, not just politically and spiritually, but also in terms of their future defence. They feel they mustn't give up these fortress cities, or they'll then lose a lot more territory to the west of those cities on the low ground. So unless the Russians are prepared to compromise on that, and there's no indication that they are, then I think they'll play for time. So, I mean, I think what this is all about, what I've always thought this was all about, is the failure of this third version of the peace process that the Americans have initiated. We've been around the same circle 3 times now. This is the 3rd time. And it's a question of who gets the blame for the failure, which is why the Ukrainians and the Europeans are leaning as far as they possibly can towards looking constructive. And the Russians are just saying, well, these are our demands. You're not meeting our demands. We'll talk about it. But I'm sure that they will come back with more requirements. The Russians won't say tomorrow, OK, we've agreed a deal, or even we've agreed an outline deal. I'll be very surprised if they do. What I think they'll say is, well, there are things we'll have to take away and think about, because the Russians don't want a ceasefire. They still think they're winning. In some respects, they're making some gains, but even smaller than they were about a month ago. But they're really hurting the Ukrainians with their air attacks every night. It's very cold in Ukraine. It's the coldest winter for many years now, and they're in their 4th winter. It's really hurting them. And I think the Russians just want to keep on doing that to see where it gets them. So they're not in any mood to have a ceasefire. And I don't think we'll see anything coming out of this meeting.
It was Martin asking whether he thought this would lead to anything, this meeting. So you think they're just kicking it into the long grass, Russia? And it seems to me that someone else just prior to us recording this was saying, what do you make of this? This is different. This is new. Again, that's what Martin is asking as well. But until the Russians show something, then to go back on your point, they're not showing anything.
No, they're not. I mean, the reason that there's more detail being talked about now is that there's a lot of theoretical issues here, a lot of hypotheticals. So if there is a ceasefire, then these might be the security guarantees. If there is a ceasefire, these might be the territorial arrangements. If there is a ceasefire, these might be the development ideas. If there is a ceasefire, these might be the ideas of a referendum and then an election in Ukraine. All these things have been talked through if there is a ceasefire. None of these things will happen unless there is a ceasefire. And the Russians don't want a ceasefire. So that's where we are with it. And we're going through the mechanics again. And the Russians, they know that they've got a great asymmetry here. When President Trump looks at Ukraine, he sees nothing but commitments and possible difficulties. When he looks at Russia, he sees nothing but possible deals and opportunities. And that's the point. And even if Trump